Before we go any further, if you're serious about building living soil that actually feeds plants instead of just holding them up, subscribe to Evergreen Garden and leave a comment below this video. Tell me what you're growing and what kind of soil you're working with, because what we're talking about today is one of the most misunderstood forces in real soil fertility. And once you see it in action, you'll never look at compost the same way again. Most gardeners are taught early on that compost is the ultimate goal. Build compost, spread compost, and earthworms will magically appear. But if you've ever added beautiful compost to a bed and noticed very few worms moving in, you've already discovered the truth the hard way. Earthworms don't chase compost. They chase something deeper, wetter, and far more biologically active, and that something is partially decomposed organic matter combined with constant moisture and microbial heat. In other words, worms prefer food that is still breaking down, not food that is already finished. Earthworms feed primarily on microorganisms, not the raw organic material itself. Compost that is fully finished is stable, cool, and biologically calm. That's great for plants, but it's not exciting for worms. Worms want bacteria and fungi in explosive growth phases. When you bury fresh plant matter like chopped weeds, green leaves, kitchen scraps, or cover crop residue, microbes swarm to break it down. That microbial explosion is what worms detect and follow through the soil. A simple comparison makes this clear. If you place finished compost on the soil surface and bury a shallow trench of fresh green material nearby, worms will concentrate in the trench within days. The trench is warmer, wetter, and alive. Compost is already digested. Worms want the kitchen while the cooking is still happening, not after the meal is done. Earthworms breathe through their skin, which means moisture is non-negotiable. Compost piles often dry out at the edges, especially once spread thinly across garden beds. Fresh, organic matter buried slightly below the surface holds moisture like a sponge. When combined with mulch on top, this creates the humid, oxygen-balanced zone worms need to survive and reproduce. A reliable ratio that works in most climates is to bury organic matter 5 to 10 centimeters below the surface, then cover the area with at least 7 centimeters of mulch. Straw, dry leaves, or shredded stems work well. This setup traps moisture, buffers temperature swings, and creates a stable worm corridor. Without moisture, even the richest compost becomes biologically inactive from a worm's perspective. Earthworms are highly sensitive to how fast material breaks down. Too much nitrogen and the material heats up aggressively and releases ammonia, which worms avoid. Too much carbon and breakdown slows to a crawl, starving microbes and worms alike. The sweet spot is a carbon-to-nitrogen balance that encourages steady decomposition without overheating. In practical terms, this means mixing roughly 2 parts green material to 1 part brown material when feeding soil directly. For example, combine 2 buckets of fresh weeds or vegetable scraps with 1 bucket of shredded dry leaves or chopped straw. Bury this blend shallowly, water it thoroughly, and cap it with mulch. Within a week or 2, worm channels will form directly through that zone. Surface compost really exposes worms to predators' drying winds and those temperature extremes. Birds, beetles, and even sunlight can drive worms deeper or just push them away entirely. But when organic matter is placed underground, worms can feed safely while improving soil structure at the same time. Every tunnel they create becomes a channel for air, water, and root growth. This is actually why trench composting and sheet mulching consistently outperform surface compost when it comes to worm activity. The goal isn't just feeding worms, the goal is letting worms rebuild soil architecture from the inside out. One of the fastest ways to attract earthworms is to pre-ferment organic matter before burying it. Light fermentation softens plant fibers, boosts microbial diversity, and lowers pH slightly, all of which worms really prefer. This can be done by soaking chopped plant material in water for 3 to 5 days until it smells earthy but not rotten. Once fermented, you'll want to bury the material shallowly at a rate of about 1 bucket per square metre. After that, give it a good watering and apply some mulch. Worm response is often visible within just a few days, which is rather impressive, really. This method works exceptionally well in compacted or tired soils, especially where compost alone just doesn't seem to do the trick. Without mulch, fresh organic matter dries out, microbes slow down, and worms retreat. Mulch isn't optional. It's the protective roof over the underground feeding zone. A living soil system requires constant cover, constant moisture, and constant organic input. Compost is just one ingredient. Worm habitat is the whole recipe. In gardens where mulch depth is maintained year-round and organic matter is fed directly into the soil, worm populations stabilize permanently. At that point, worms begin pulling surface material underground on their own, doing the work for you. Choose one garden bed and stop adding compost to the surface. Instead, dig a shallow trench or loosen the top layer of soil. Mix fresh greens and browns at a 2-to-1 ratio, bury it lightly, soak it thoroughly, and mulch heavily. Repeat this process every 4 to 6 weeks during the growing season. Over time, the soil becomes darker, softer, and more resilient without constant external inputs. If you want soil that builds itself, follow the worms. They've been doing this work for hundreds of millions of years, and they're very clear about what they want. If this guide helped you rethink compost and start working with soil life instead of against it, subscribe to Evergreen Garden. Share this with a fellow gardener who's still wondering where all their worms went, and drop a comment below telling me what method you're going to try first. This channel is about building soil that lasts, and I'll see you in the next one.